As part of the centenary celebrations of famous ceramic artist Esias Bosch's birthday, Strauss Company is very privileged to host a single artist timed online auction running from the 13th till the 20th of February 2023. And we are also very fortunate to speak to his son Anton Bosch today. Anton, very welcome.
Thank you.
Now, I want to start by taking you into Esias's studio. And this is one description that I found in a magazine. Voices, wheels, blungers, mixtures, kilners, clicking over, fans, saws, trolleys, kilns being wheeled aside, taps, water buckets, sieves, tables being wheeled aside, tape, bubble wrap, clients, phones. Now, these are not your words. They are from your sisters, Ezra, who's also a ceramic artist in her own right. And you basically grew up in Esias's studio. And I want you to tell us about your experiences growing up and developing as a ceramic artist yourself.
Well, I've been in this. I've always been in the studio since I can remember. I mean, it's part of the whole upbringing that we had. I remember in the early days when I was not preschool, even working aside with Sias and picking up things and helping him move around things, and from a very early age he helped me on the wheel. So that the foundation was set in those days, and above all, he taught me discipline and work ethics.
So I am showing a couple of slides from the studio. It looks like quite an impressive setup there. What are we looking at there in the distance? What is he doing there?
Yeah, yes, that's a view of the studio when he was doing his very large ceramic tiles. And those are the two kilns that he was using at that time. And in the foreground, you can see a few examples of the tiles here and there, some standing upright against the kiln. So he was busy decorating and packing the kiln at that time.
And this, what are we looking at here?
Yes, he's glazing a vase with on the bucket it says actually celadon. It's a celadon glaze, and that's just a typical photo of glazing, and that's his glazes in the background, all the raw materials, and some extra glazed buckets on the floor.
Okay. Now, the studio was like a huge setup. This is a ground plan of the studio that I found in one of the publications on his work.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's quite a large studio. It's got a clay room, got the kilns room where the big kilns are, the flat kilns, and some other electric kilns and so on. And at the bottom, there was the raw materials, where the storage was for the raw materials. There was a showroom, and there was a extra bathroom and shower for guests and so on. So yes, it's quite an established studio.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, in this publication, the National Ceramics from 2010, and that was also the year in which Esias died. What I find interesting there was a wonderful tribute that the three children, you and Ezra and Andrea, wrote about your father after his death. And in your contribution, you mentioned the lessons that you learned from Esias. And here are three statements that you made. Wrestle with the clay, and the clay will wrestle back. Remember to ease into reduction. Play the ceramic games. What are those things mean?
Well, just now when I was referring where I grew up, and he taught me to work on the wheel and center the clay and so on. And that was one of the first lessons that the first statements that he actually taught me, is to say that, if you push the clay too hard, it will always push back, because clay's got a memory to it. And even now when I teach my my grandchildren on the wheel, I convey the same message to them. So it is a known fact. And remember to ease into reduction. I was very fortunate to fire some of his kilns for him. He would have gone out maybe for the evening to have a short dinner with some friends, that maybe an hour or so. He just slipped away, and so I took over and fired his kilns for him just to stand in there. And sometimes it was at that time when the kiln used to go into a reduction phase, which just means that it's a setting that you do to the kiln. These kilns are burned with paraffin. It's not electric kilns. So that means that you slowly turn off the oxygen, you starve the actual the atmosphere of oxygen, and it goes into reduction, and it changes the colors of the glaze and so on. And we always say is ease into it. Just don't rush into any reduction, and most potters will tell you the same. And the play the ceramics game is one of his statements that towards the end of his career, when he stopped doing ceramics and went over to his paintings and drawings, I think, you know, it is a very physically demanding work, ceramics, especially on the scale that he did it, with the large tiles and so on. And I think, you know, it's very technical and so on. So I just think in the end it caught up to him, and it was sort of, you know, he just decided to change his you know, the way that he wants to be creative.
Now, I want to go a little back to his own training and education in ceramics. You know, I think we all know that he started out studying fine art at the University of the Witwatersrand, but soon after that he got a bursary to go to England and focus on ceramic. And what I'm showing here is really the cover and the back of a publication, a 5-inch publication on studio pottery. And this captures the wonderful collection at the Victoria and Albert Museum of mid-century ceramics. And why I mentioned that is because he also met up with Michael Cardew, and I am showing you a couple of examples of Michael's work that is also in the Victoria and Albert Museum. What do you think he learned from his extended stay there?
Well, you know, it's actually, I think what he learned is, it's beyond, you know, words really. They had if I say they, Raymond Finch as well, and Michael had a huge influence on his whole way of thinking about ceramics. And Michael also had they were very disciplined potters, Michael and Ray Finch, and they taught him about reduction and firing and so on, but it's all the way they looked at life. And I think he took that with him, even when he visited Michael in Nigeria. He came back and he was very influenced what he saw there, came back and took that through his whole career in his ceramics. They even they visited him at his studio called the Rheinke outside White River. And so they did spend a lot of time with him. And Raymond's son, Joe, also worked with my father for a while. And he also spent some time in Kulanyama. So yes, they had a huge influence on him.
Now, when he came back to South Africa in the mid-1950s, I think before he built his studio in the Eastern Transvaal or Mpumalanga, he had a couple of interesting, I think, experiences captured in this publication by Wendy Gers, Scorched Earth. And she doesn't focus on individual artist studios, but rather on the small-scale potteries. And in this publication, I read that he worked for a brief period of time at the Globe Potteries. The Globe Potteries, as we know, was in New Mechelneuk in Pretoria. And I'm just showing you one or two. That was, of course, on the right-hand side, the impression. And on the left-hand side, some of the shapes and some of the glazes that he did. And they were also known for their dinner service, their tableware, their utilitarian ware. And on sale, we have a complete dinner service, which you see in here. What do you think he learned from his experiences working at the Globe?
Well, at the Globe, it was earthenware, because they used that clay that used to come from Houghton. It's a red clay. It's a lovely earthenware clay that you don't get anymore. So he only spent a couple of months there at the Globe Potteries, and he did a lot of decoration for them. And of course, then he moved on to Durban. We taught at the Durban Art School. But this particular set that we're looking at now, this is a stoneware set that he made in the 70s. And it's a lovely, lovely set. And this is typical, the sort of tradition that we've learned at Michael Cardew and Ray Finch, this typical way of throwing. The shapes are harmonized. It's lovely. The dimensions is right. The plate sizes are well thrown, and it's a lovely iron Temuku glaze. So it's all round. It's a lovely, lovely set.
No, indeed. And then also, when he moved to, I read again in Wendy Beers' a book that just soon after they set up the studio in White River in the Eastern Transvaal. Somebody who came past for a very brief period of time was Ian Dale, and Ian Dale then moved across the border to Swaziland, where he set up the Kolonyama. And I think this is typical Kolonyama way, yeah.
Yeah, I think they were in Lesotho, if I'm not mistaken, Kolonyama. And Ian Dale was there, and then Joe Finch also spent some time there with his wife Trudy, and she did most of the decoration, I think, at that time. And this is typical. This sort of decoration was very influenced by Esias's decoration, and you can also see the way that these plates are thrown, typical that sort of style that Esias would have used, that you would have learned by Michael and Raymond, and of course Joe Finch is Raymond's son, and he's also very skilled and accomplished potter. So it was also very nice, lovely glazes and well thrown.
So now, one of the interesting things that I found, doing research on his career, was that Esias was taken up in most of the major publications on South African art, starting with our art #3, published in the early 1970s. There's a whole entry, there's a long discussion, many illustrations in this particular publication. The same with this publication from 1974, Potters of Southern Africa, and they focus on the individual ceramic artist studio. With a number of them, Esias is of course the first in this particular book, by Clark and Wagner. And as you can see, they're quite detailed, lovely photographs. For instance, there on the top right-hand side, you can see where the Kolonyama got their inspiration from. These tall vases, these tall vases, the floor pots, the large-scale tiles that you see over there, and you can see the vast range of shapes he explored. One can't really see the color of the glazing in these black and white photos. This is an interesting lot.
Yes, this is a sort of a whitish dolomite glaze that he used here, and then you get that iron breakthrough that is in heavy reduction, that it comes out of the clay body, and then it manifests itself on the surface of the glaze, because you get that interaction between the glaze and the actual clay. And that's why it manifests itself there. It's lovely. And it's also these comb decorations. It's very, it's also very typical of what Esias did. And it's lovely.
I must say they are some of my favorite shapes. And
yes, they're quiet, yet they're substantial.
and we look at some other shapes. And then, of
No,
course,
these are all ash glazes and so on. Very interesting.
so Esias was also mentioned in this particular contemporary ceramics in South Africa. And this is the entry in that particular book. So the focus here is on some of his later works, the works what I call painterly tiles. And you can see an example on the right-hand side. And it's interesting that the author here mentioned that he can be, well, she wants to call him the Claude Monet of South African ceramics, which I find quite interesting. Yeah.
Yes, no, those styles. He's decorating one of the tiles. That's just a smaller version, but they got bigger as time went by.
Okay, I think here he is busy with one of those painterly tiles. Now, describe to us how he went about doing those very intricate, very detailed work.
Yes, well, this is it's just to show an example how I work with a brush, but sometimes you use what we in ceramic it's called a slip trailer. It's thick watery clay that's like in a slip form. It's quite fluid, but it's like cream, I would say. And that he built on these huge plaques, a layer and then fired and layer, and so they were layered, and that's where the color eventually they were very translucent, well, not translucent that you could see through them, but the glazed surface was almost that you could see one layer above the other layer. So they were very bright and cheerful and happy.
No, indeed, we are very fortunate to have a lovely example that seascape on the sale, as you can see there, and the model in front just gives you an indication of the size of that particular work, but we'll get back to that in a second. Now, the last publication is this, of course, written by your sister, a magnificent book. On the left, the cover, and on the right, the back cover. And what is striking for me in this publication is the wonderful, wonderful period photographs that you see over here.
Yes. Well, the photographs on the left-hand side is him and my mom when they were in the UK, where they were, I think he was in his late 20s. And those are photos of him at Winchcombe, in the clay room and the throwing rooms, and at the drying room as well. And then on the right-hand side is where he started to build his first wood kiln when he came back from Nigeria. He was very influenced by Michael, and he started there, and he built this wood kiln. As you can see, it didn't have a roof. Later there was a roof structure, and yeah, so those very old and significant photos.
Very nice. And also very striking and beautifully illustrated in the book is all his commissioned work. I think chief amongst this magnificent piece for, if I'm not mistaken, the old Jan Smuts Airport.
That's correct. Yes, so it was a huge commission. Did in this middle late 70s, 76, 74, that era, and this was as far as I remember, I think it was about 90 meters per wall. This same was on the other side as well, and there was the same on the other side. And those free-flying birds and those relief decorations were very successful, and the light played, and you can see it's almost like they're moving.
Exactly.
So I think that was the whole idea, to this birds moving and the sun and so on. Very lovely.
Now I can imagine, with the relief, as you mentioned, and you're walking past there, I'm sure it's almost as if you could see the movement, of the clouds.
Yeah,
and the birds
that's that part of that relief and the light and so on. So yes,
absolutely fantastic work. Now, I just want to talk a little bit about some of the lots on sale. These are stoneware. You mentioned earthenware, and I read somewhere that his favorite medium was in fact stoneware. What is the difference between earthenware and stoneware, for instance?
Well, the difference is the temperature. Earthenware is normally about to 1100 degrees Celsius, a bit lower maybe. and your stoneware is a bit higher. It starts about 1250, I would say. It's successful stoneware, and the stoneware is it's normally a grayish to a buff colored clay because it's normally fired in reduction. You get white stoneware. It's not on. You know, it's something that you get. Lucy Ree was one, and Hans Koper used to do oxidized stoneware. So it's been done all over the world, but that's the main difference is the temperatures really.
Okay, and then also striking the bird decoration here, because they remind me very much of Georges Braque.
Yeah.
Yes,
well, birds yeah, I know. Yeah, Matisse used them a lot. Batters even. You know, so it's all artists all over the world also use the birds as for decoration purposes.
But I think I read somewhere that he was like a bird watcher of the Eastern Transvaal in Mpumalanga, you know, and he tried to capture the local birds there, you know, so that was
yes, no, they're typical East birds, those, yes.
And then you move on to using porcelain. Now, what's the difference between, for instance, stoneware and porcelain?
Well, porcelain is white. It's a white kaolin clay. So it's got no iron in it. Ideal porcelain should have no iron in it. So this was the porcelain that used to come from the Kommetjie area. Serena was the sales name, but it was the Kommetjie porcelain. It was a pure white porcelain, fantastic porcelain, but it needed a very high temperature to vitrify. And so Esias fired his porcelain kiln to a very high cone 14, which is about 1400 degrees Celsius. So it's very hot. It's extremely hot. It's almost a white heat inside. And that's why these porcelain are so magnificent. And you get that lovely cobalt that softens. It's not a striking cobalt. It's got this interaction with the clay and the glaze. Lovely pots.
Then one thing that always fascinates me is how on earth did he manage to get the lid to fit so perfectly? I think that's a trade secret.
The lid and the vase is thrown one after the other, almost simultaneously if you want.
Oh, okay.
So you can't throw the vase and dry it and then throw the lid and think it's going to fit because they've got to dry together. As the clay shrinks, the lid's got to shrink with the pot.
Yeah, right. And then after the porcelain, and I imagine him planning. Did he make a lot of sketches for
yes, he did a lot of sketches. Yes, a lot of sketches, always even of his tiles and so on. So yeah, it's just part of the whole creative process.
And then he went on to the lusterware. Here you can see sort of like the reflection of the sun on them. It's actually quite difficult to photograph them.
Yes,
but they really come to their full indirect sunlight, as you can see reflected here. And then just to give you a sense of the scale, here we have a couple of two of those large-scale lusterware panels. Now, how on earth did he do those? How did he manage to do that size?
Well, those you also use those kilns of these, those flat kilns, but these tiles were vitrified and they were imported from Buchtal in Germany, especially for him to work on. And then he fired it and took it further. But it's quite interesting. The one in the far left there, with the round circle, is inside is platinum luster. And he did very few of them. It's a very scarce luster. I don't think you can get them anymore, as far as I know. So that's why you can see it's a bit silvery in color. That's a platinum luster. And the rest is, of course, his gold luster, which also came from Germany. It comes in a liquid form, oil-based, and then the oil burns away during the firing process and the gold stays behind. So it is real gold. Very difficult to work with, extremely... it's very it affects your lungs and so on. So it's not easy to work with. It's very sticky and but it's got a lovely quality to
it. Somebody looking at them said to me, well, how on earth did he get that what looks like an oil spill? And I said to her, my dear, that's called iridescence. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's I say that it's difficult to work with, but it's got a very good effect.
Yeah, amazing stuff. And then, of course, the painterly tiles, we mentioned that. And then the interesting thing is, towards the end of his life, he started painting and doing works
Yes.
on paper.
Yeah. Yes, he did, and he spent he not only on paper, he did lovely tree drawings on board. He had the board prepared, and most of them he did himself. He had sort of a
Yeah. And I take it these are
sort of
all
layer that he put on before he
indigenous
started to work.
to Mpumalanga.
And so, yeah, they were very successful and also lovely pieces.
Yeah, yeah, we actually have two of them on the auction. Now, the last thing I want to ask you is about, you know, the fact that he didn't really sign or engrave his ceramic art. I checked in the Southern African ceramics, the marks, monograms, and signatures, and I only discovered one, as you can see on the right-hand side. But in the main, he didn't really sign his work.
No, no, well, I think, you know, well, he mentioned it that his work should stand on its own. It's not necessary to be signed. That was his way of looking at it. That was his decision. And so he believed in that. He thought the work will stand for itself.
Okay, thank you. And then, Anton, that was great talking to you. And then just to remind everybody, the sale is called Esias Bosch 100. It runs from the 13th till the 20th of February. It is a timed online auction. You can come and view it. Everything is up, beautifully displayed between Monday and Friday, 8:30 to 4:30. We will have a public lecture by Dr. Ronnie Watt, who specialized in the work of Bosch. It will be on the 16th of February, but you please have to book. And there I put an email address and a telephone number, and I hope to see all of you coming to view this wonderful exhibition, these amazing works by Esias Bosch. Thanks again, and great talking to you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much. Keep well. Bye-bye.
Okay.